Hey everybody, welcome back to the Spinner Rack. This is Mars here, and I'm here with my boy Cal. Cal, say what's up.
Hey, ready to rock.
Hey, today we're having a conversation about Fantastic Four First Steps, the Marvel movie that just came out. A lot to say, This is Marvel's rendition of the Fantastic Four story. It's very interesting, takes a very 60s aesthetics. But hey, I'm going to give it to my man Cal to give us his thoughts on this movie. What did he think about what's going to happen with this in the future? So, Cal, let's rip into it, baby. What are you talking about? Was this something that you wanted to see, or is this something that you felt was not there?
Well, yes, I wanted to see it. Big fan of the Fantastic Four from the comics. I enjoyed the Fantastic Four movies, like the early aughts with Young Griffith and Jessica Alba. I thought those were entertaining movies, and I thought this was very much in the same vein, not necessarily of those movies, but that the general audience would be responsive and receptive to what was being presented to them. I wouldn't say this is a comic book movie necessarily, but I remember being in the audience and the audience, like literally going, oh, at certain points and, applauding at certain points. So I thought that Marvel tacked to what they needed to do and executed well on that. So if you're somebody going in, like, yeah, I think for the general audience, yes, this is going to be a fun movie. For someone like myself, who's, 100% comic book guy, I definitely had some criticism about it, but I thought the whole idea was to get people back into the theater and get them trusting again that when they sit to see a movie with the Marvel brand, that they're going to be entertained and it's going to be a solid movie.
Okay, I have to agree with you 100% that's exactly how I felt. This movie definitely was hitting in all cylinders. I came in with very, 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 very low expectations. I think I said several times, I ain't watching this. I'm not interested. It's the dumbest thing in the world, you know. But Pedro Pascal is not Mr. Fantastic. Um, the Silver Surfer is not Shabalala, I think he's called her. But I came out actually enjoying the movie. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it. Of course, there's always quibbles and stuff like that, but I thought there were a lot of. It was not as represented in the Echoverse, I guess, right? Where people are saying, "Oh, it's bad. Sue's taking over. The Grimm is horrible. Johnny makes no sense." The movie kind of flowed. In fact, I think it may have been a little shorter than I expected, actually. I thought it could have been a little longer to add more facts, but the elements in there were pretty good. So, let's start origin. What do you think about the fact that they didn't even go into the whole origin story of the Fantastic Four? They just put us right in the beginning. What's your take on that? It kind of reminded me of Superman.
If you do the origin story, you can't tell this story without it being 3 hours long because the origin itself is about 45 minutes long. So we got to get introduced to them. We have to have the complication necessary for them to go into space or the reason for them to go into space. They have to go into space. They have to have the cosmic storm. They have to have their powers for the first time, adjust, and then become the Fantastic Four. That's a lot of time. And so you don't have this particular story doing that. So you split the difference. You do the 5 minute flash, but you do the 5 minute flashback. You show all of the important elements of the origin and that they're already established. Then you can just get off to the races with this particular story.
Yeah, I agree with you there. 100%. I think that they did a good job. I'm shocked I'm agreeing with you so often, but I think they definitely did a good job by, being stuck in doing the origin story is just sometimes it's too much baggage, and that's where I agree 100%. And they did that in the Superman movie. They're like, here, this is what it is. Let's move on, you know.
Most
Um,
people should know. Most people probably know Superman's origin. The bullet points they probably know, but surprisingly, I think for the average person, most people also are not unfamiliar with the Fantastic Four. There's been three Fantastic Four movies. So this wouldn't be their first jaunt to the silver screen where, okay, we need to introduce this. There have been three different movies with the Fantastic Four, four if you count the one that never made it to the screen but is all over YouTube. So these aren't characters that people would be totally unfamiliar with.
Got it. Good point. Good point. So hey, let's before we even start the background, let's talk about some of the characters. What was your take on it? I mean, let's start before we hit the big kahuna. Let's start with like what is your thought about Sue? I mean, I felt it was pretty surprising. I think she did a good job, and it wasn't as bad as people. Not bad. People were saying, "Oh, she was going to be running the show, and Reed was going to be totally sidelined." That was not the case here.
Well,
I thought,
that's
especially
that's their own fault. That because of the press they did, that's their own fault if anybody picked up on that, because they consistently said things about Sue Richards that weren't necessary. They had nothing to do with the film. That Sue is a fully developed person, and Sue is her own woman, and when you say stuff like that, and then where they're trying to make this comparison between Reed Richards' intelligence and Sue Richards' emotional intelligence. And it literally was like a blip in the movie about her negotiating this peace between Earth and Subterranea. And they made so much of it over the course of these interviews. These were red flags for anyone who was thinking, okay, you're gonna do this boss babe type stuff.
yeah,
And again, I don't know why they did it. It was such a small portion of it was literally like a fragment, like literally like a 0.0000 decimal of this particular film. So I don't know why they spent so much time talking about that. And I'd already said, if you want to set this in the 1960s and call it, retro futuristic, that oxymoronical phrase, then you don't have to have the same 60s where it's like, okay, women don't have autonomy, all this. You don't have, it doesn't have to be exactly the same world, but they treated it like they needed to make these particular statements. But it was your choice to set it in a 1960s world. So it didn't make a lot of sense. I thought overall Sue was fine, but you could see they were trying to give her a bit of an edge in the movie that Sue Storm doesn't quite. Well, Sue Storm doesn't have this edge in the comics. There were certain times I was looking, I was like, okay, but there might be some other stuff they want to play around with there. But overall, I thought Sue Richards was fine.
okay, I'm with you on that one. Um, Again, not going to the big guy yet, but what about Grimm and uh, uh, you know Grimm? What about Grimm? What do you think about him? His portrayal in the movie. He was a little lacking for me, but what's your take on it?
He was just there. I mean, they had some stuff for him, and they tried to do the whole thing with him being connected to Yancey Street, which is fine, but that's really more of a comic book thing where you can develop it. He's going there, and I mean, us as the audience is like, okay, Ben's visiting his old haunts, that sort of stuff. But I thought you could have made better use of the alone time, if you will, that he was going to have as a character. And then, he meets up with, I don't even remember her name. I don't remember her name of the character who still lives in his neighborhood. And I'm
Not,
scratching my head. Say again?
not Alicia.
That was the thing. I was like, why isn't this Alicia Masters? If he's, I don't understand why they made that choice when he has a long, in the comic books, he got married to Alicia. I don't know if he's still married to her, but I haven't checked in a while. But he's married to Alicia Masters, and in the other films, Alicia Masters is there. Why isn't she here? It was a very strange choice in terms of what they did with the thing. I felt for the most part, even though I don't think they made any errors, they didn't do anything harmful with the thing. He was, I think, to a large extent in those scenes just there. He really shined as a pilot in probably the best scene of the movie where they're trying to escape from Galactus and the Silver Surfer. Right there, he really stood out, and I really like that because a lot of people seem to forget that Ben Grimm is a top-notch pilot. So I thought those were really good scenes. But the other stuff, the Yancey Street stuff, just didn't resonate for me because there's just no. We don't know why Yancey Street means anything to him because, and I'll sound contradictory to here, we don't have an origin, so we don't know why it means it's such a big deal for him. We just see him going there.
Well, no, he does say that's where he's from, so that may be why the nostalgia that he wants to go back. But I guess to me though was the issue like they bringing this other female character that I'm not familiar with, and it's very possible. Like I said, Alicia Masters is practically a major. I don't know if you can say major supporting character, right? Even if you don't want to get into the whole thing, you should at least that is a very foundational relationship for him, right? You can't have Alicia Masters. Everyone knows is with him, and she chooses him over others, because of the way of who he is inside as opposed to what he looks. And you miss that with Ben. But then
Yeah,
again, he was so emotionally like such a nice guy. There was no rough edges on this guy, so I was like, I don't know. So hey, we'll
Oh,
skip it. What about
well,
Johnny? Sorry, what were you
no,
gonna say?
I didn't, necessarily. Well, they tend to want the male characters to emote more than be competent or decisive, in film these days. But Alicia is also a very big part of the Galactus story because she's the one who the Silver Surfer meets after Ben knocks him out. And then because of the connection he makes with her, realizing this is what a human being is like, it changes his viewpoint and he actually turns against Galactus. So she is a major part of that three-part story in the comics, but she's not here. So those type of decisions, yeah, because if you're looking for some way to get Ben connected to people, which is looks like that's what he's trying to do by going back to Yancey Street, well, you took out the one person he was already connected to within the storyline. So again, not really sure about why that was the case, but wasn't a deal breaker. And again, I got some really nice scenes with Ben doing the piloting.
All right. So Johnny, what's your take on Johnny? How he was played, how he was portrayed?
Well, he's in the same boat with Ben, where, okay, you say that Yancey Street means something, but we don't really see it. We're told, but we don't really show it. And you got him there walking around and nothing's happening. And then with Johnny, Johnny is supposedly a ladies' man who doesn't talk to any girls. And then people like, well, he talked to the Silver Surfer. I'm like, so what? Like, so what? A ladies' man usually tends to have girls around or some girls calling him or he's looking at girls. We hear about it, and the next thing you know, the rest of the movie is with this, the Silver Surfer. You didn't have to say that. If he could still have all the scenes with the Silver Surfer, and that bit didn't have to be said. I did think they did the best demonstration of abilities always been with Johnny. He's the coolest character of the Fantastic Four. They tend to have, yeah, I don't think there's been a film where they really messed up in terms of a display of his powers and executing them well for the screen. And everything that he was between him and the Silver Surfer, I thought they did very well because I know from the comics that he's pretty much no match for the Silver Surfer on any level. But they did the dynamics that they did with them flying, those type of things, I thought were pretty good. The him flying after her, going into space, that hanging space moment, those things were really well done. Very nice visuals, very good execution there. In terms of his overall character, they made Johnny a lot smarter than I'm used to him being. So, he's like, I figured out the alien language. I was like, really? The Johnny I know would have been chasing some girls. Like, hey, Reed will handle it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Johnny, I just thought that him trying to figure out this language, just didn't seem the Johnny Storm that I knew. And I mean, they didn't say he had like linguistic abilities or something like that.
It's
Uh,
just, it's not that Johnny's stupid or not smart. It's just, this is not something I could see Johnny being interested in at the
well,
end of the day.
they didn't lay the groundwork for it to say, "Hey, Johnny's interested in he's interested in this girl first. Is he interested in the girl first, or is he interested in the in the in the in
Yeah,
the?"
we don't know that at all. See, if Johnny's interested in Shalabal, then that would give him some impetus, some motivation for doing this. But but just being interested in cracking the code of the language itself, that's not the Johnny Storm that I know. That's something Reed would have done, and Reed would have done that pretty quickly. So, Reed already has a universal translator, so Reed would have been able to do that pretty quickly. But I guess they wanted to show Johnny doing something other than flying around, being cool as the Human Torch. I don't know why, but they decided he's going to be a universal translator himself.
All right, so let's get to the big man himself. Reed, what's your take on that? I mean, on my end, Pedro Pascal surprised me, but what's your take?
Good job in terms of, I thought he did an adequate job in expressing Reed Richards as this high level intellect. But again, there was a lot of time when he just spent, this is like a lot of emoting. And, Reed Richards, I mean, he was the leader of the team. He was the leader of the team. And I'm glad they left that with him where, he'll say something like, Johnny, Ben, and everybody knows what to do. He doesn't have to give anything more than that because they've been doing this for a while. I think somebody even said, I thought this was one of the more uninspired criticisms I heard. They were like, well, Reed Richards so smart. Why didn't he develop a cloaking device for the Excelsior spaceship. And I'm scratching my head. It's like, why do you need a cloaking device if you have Sue Storm? You know,
Wait,
I was like, what do you need a cloaking device for? You have the invisible woman there. She can turn it invisible whenever you want. So what do you need this redundant system there for? You could just do something else. But again, that would show, intellect on his part. But they just did spend a lot of time with Reed. They're more, again, with Hollywood right now with the male characters is more interested in the male characters showing emotion, feminine emotion at that. And with here, I think one of the moments where I was like really troubled is when they were asking Reed, and he was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, no, that's not what Reed Richards would say. Reed Richards might say, I'm sorting it out, these sort of things, but I don't know. That's not really a Reed Richards phrase. So that type of stuff I didn't necessarily agree with. But I'll be with you. I thought Pedro Pascal overall did a very good job, with the leadership role with Reed and uh, working out things on an intellectual level. I thought he did a good job with that. And people giving him a hard time, like, oh yeah, he teleported an egg and now he's got to teleport a planet. They're like, dude, it, Galactus is coming to eat the planet. You got to do something, okay? So he's doing this right now. It was like, those type of criticisms I thought were totally unfair. It's like this is something he's working on. Okay, he's going to expand on it. But Reed is smart enough to be able to try to pull something like that off if you've only got 30 days to pull something off. So I thought that was fair. I thought that was completely fine on his part. Some other things I might have had some issue with, but I thought Reed was rendered pretty well overall. Overall.
and his plan actually worked until the Silver Surfer showed up, right? So we even though
The
it
plan
didn't,
did work
yeah,
because eventually Galactus is sent exactly where he wanted to put the Earth, and that was part of his when th- that's that was good on his part. Where he's like, okay, he does come up with the plan. All right, we're gonna teleport the Earth. Okay, we can't teleport the Earth, so we're gonna teleport Galactus. And
exactly. That's what I was going to say. So his plan did work, and so I that's why I like the whole plan. It was plausible. I liked it in the fact that he was able to come up. This is Reed, who's like you said, he's a genius level guy. He's thinking up different things. He's just not. There's a wall. He thinks, how do I go around the wall? How do I go through the wall? And then there's the math. People were saying, oh, like you were saying, oh, this doesn't make any sense with an egg, dude. If you can move an egg, right? If you could teleport an egg, then the question is just how do you scale it now, right? That's really what it is. How
yeah,
do you scale it? And so he, being the genius he was able to figure out. So when I hear that in criticism, I just wanted to knock people out sometimes. But hey, that's a whole different thing. Another thing,
you have to be fair. You have to be fair. Because people are like, oh, what about the moon and what about the sun? I'm like, come on, guys, like, come on.
well, come on, give me a break, give me a break.
Yeah,
But um, overall, I think Reed was a pretty strong character. Now moving on to our antagonists. Let's start with the very first one, Shalabala. What is it? Shalabala?
Shalabal.
Oh, yeah. What's your take? I mean, for me, it was the CGI. I know where the budget went, and it wasn't going to her. So, what's your take on the character altogether?
Hey, I'm sorry. Hang on just a second. Pause it. Pause it.
Sure.
Got an interruption here.
So, getting back to Shalavala, it's to me the issue with the character has been now that they gender swapped, and I understand. I'm not even going to argue about the whole gender swap. The question is
I will.
whether or not the character was um, as effective as it could be, you know. And I thought, as a herald, I didn't feel that, when you see Silver Surfer, the other Silver Surfer is larger than life. When this guy comes, is bananas. Now, Shana Bala, when she was doing what she was doing, I mean, look, when she was doing surfing through that wormhole or whatever, that was off the chain. I mean, one of the best aspects of the movie, down pat. That's you could tell they put money into that, and it looked fantastic. Her power, the way she's able to move when she was destroying the stations on Earth for teleportation, fantastic. She's moving fast. She's here. She's there. She's able to keep. She got out of the black hole somehow. Her powers because she has powers the power cosmic. But it's like I just wish that she was more of a personality as opposed to just a blank slate almost. I felt that in the other Silver Surfer was much more the comics much more connected to and he saw what was going on Earth and he said, hey, I have to help. And this one is like I still feel like my planet was taken over, was saved by Galactus, and I'm doing this penance. But I didn't feel like either way. She could have kept on doing this for all I could tell.
There
What
was
about
no
you?
there was no reason for switching Silver Surfer Nora and Red to Shalabal. There was just no reason for it based on this story. Uh,
There's a
what,
reason.
what was the reason?
It's too many males. They wanted to give another female. They wanted to get more females into the role.
That's not a reason. You you could
That,
still keep you could still keep the Silver Surfer, and you could have had Alicia Masters, who had a prominent role in the storyline.
that's true. That
Okay?
is,
If you could have also brought in one of Johnny's many girlfriends. There's other ways that you can get female characters in here, but they keep making the same mistake of it's not enough to get a female character in here. We want her to have a prominent role, and the easiest way to get a prominent role is to do a switch on one of the major characters. But with Norrin Rad, we knew why Norrin Rad was the Silver Surfer. Okay, here, I didn't really know why it was that Shala Ball became Silver Surfer, and she has a daughter. So who's taking care of the daughter? I mean, from what we saw in the film, she doesn't seem like that. Doesn't seem to be a father. So it wasn't that she left her family, and Norman Rad was single, so it wasn't an issue with him. So those type of story beats, I don't know if the audience really cares. That's why I said I think it's good for a general audience. For me, comic book guys, since I already know who the original characters are in the storylines, when I look at this, it's like there was no reason to change Silver Surfer to Fashala Balk. There was no reason. She's not anybody's love interest. There was no different storyline. There's no connection between her being a mother and Sue being a mother. There was no reason for it. They just did it, and that was pretty much the end of it. Uh, the CGI on her could have been a bit better, but I'll agree with you. The sequences that she was in, especially she didn't really display a lot of the Silver Surfer's abilities. She was fast and she could move through objects, but that scene where she's chasing after them on the spaceship and you can see her hand like moving through Sue's belly, like she's gonna just take Franklin out of the womb. you
yeah.
know, that was good. Some really good stuff there, but it's just for me very glaring that you could have had that with Norman Rad. You could have had that with Norman Rad at the end of the day. There was no reason for this change. There just isn't.
Interesting. Okay. Um. Now, the man himself, Galactus. I gotta say, Galactus looked absolute fantastic. I mean, just when they first meet him in his ship, I'm like, oh my goodness. When Galactus opens his eyes, you're like, oh go. When he is getting up and he's the what do you call it? The cords that are holding on to him, that are feeding him energy, start ripping off. You're like, yo, this is like almost like the Galactus I've always dreamed about. Then you have Galactus walking on Earth, and you see the shadow, and that shadow is like going all across the city, and I'm like, what the goonie goo goo, bro? They couldn't have done it any better. And the details, the way his outfit looked, and the voice, I was like, could have been a little deeper, but I said, yo, not bad at all on the Galactus. What's your take on Galactus?
I think for a general audience, they'll be very happy with Galactus. Me, comic book guy, no, was not happy with Galactus. Probably visually without a doubt, best rendition of Galactus on screen. In terms of character, the Galactus that I know doesn't need to walk through New York City because he can fly. So I didn't. I was like, he's doing this. It's like they just turned him into like a big robotic kaiju at the end of the day. So,
But it
and
looked good though. You got to give credit to that. Come on, man.
he's Galactus. He's not just a giant kaiju moving through the city, breaking buildings. He's Galactus. Galactus can fly. Galactus is the power cosmic. He's the person who gives the Silver Surfer her abilities. So what we saw from him for the most part was just his eyes lighting up and him walking through New York City. If he wanted to get Franklin, he could have literally just flew over there, raised his hand out, levitated Franklin to him, and been out of there. He's that powerful. And here they just made him a big giant. And then you have the whole thing with him walking through Reed, uncouples one of the ports from his back, and then he's stretching Reed out. And I was like, okay, Reed can stretch a lot farther than that. They didn't. I think that was the only thing with Reed that I thought was they thought they didn't get right. I was like, they don't understand his powers. They just turned him into like Mr. Hopman, where he can like stretch a little bit. I was like, no, Reed could literally stretch and wrap himself all around Galactus if he wanted to. There's real you have to really press Reed at the end of the day to get to the upper limits of how far he can stretch. And so, but then Galactus wouldn't even have to do that. Galactus would have just like, done something power cosmic like that right over there just made him look cruel. And Galactus that's not really his character. The biggest thing was that they defeated Galactus by pushing him in a hole. And I was like, okay, you've got to be kidding me. Okay. It's a great moment for Sue. It's a great moment for Sue. Save our son. Save our son. It's a great moment for her. But Galactus is supposed to be a primordial cosmic being who has the power cosmic. You're not supposed to be pushing these type of guys into a hole, and that's it. When if you read, and I highly encourage everyone, if you want to read the original story, the idea was the Fantastic Four had to fight against a threat that they couldn't physically beat. They couldn't beat him. They couldn't outthink him. Galactus was that powerful. They had to find another way, and you'll see how they were able to do it if you haven't read it already. Here, Galactus should be that same level of threat, and they just really made him into a giant that you can push into a hole. And then I guess so. And when you do that, you just turn them into a bum of the month club, like a lot of the other Marvel villains, where we see them one time and then we don't see them ever again.
Oh no, it's a shame. They don't say that, bro, because then you defeat a lot of things. Don't say that. Don't say
They
that.
did that with the Red Skull, and the Red Skull is a major villain for Captain America. We saw the Red Skull in one movie, and that was it. Then people want to say, "Oh, well, he came back in Infinity War." Yeah, whatever. The Red Skull is supposed to be there, putting the screws to Captain America. That is a major villain, and they got rid of him without any problem one time.
Hey, let's
One
talk
time.
about. At least he showed up as a villain. What about the Mandarin? Come on, come
He
on.
he
That
still hasn't shown up.
that one is like bananas. The
I don't
Mandarin.
know. I don't know who the guy is. The guy who showed up, that's a totally different character. That's not the Mandarin.
It's not the Mandarin. All right. So overall, I mean, let me give 2 seconds to Herbie. Herbie, what do you think about Herbie?
I don't know. Herbie was fine. I mean, I guess the only criticism I could have with Herbie is that it's a good thing Herbie's around because otherwise nobody's taking care of Franklin.
Okay, enough
Oh
said.
yeah,
Okay,
I
enough.
almost forgot. I almost forgot. Like how far along was Sue when she went into space?
She was pretty far along, but remember this was over months, and we thought it was going to be like the typical comic book movie that happens over a couple of days or whatever. This there was actually a time period from when she
No,
was.
when she goes into space, is she because they don't spend that much time in space because they're doing faster than light travel. So like, what is she like? I mean, how I thought she may be like 6 months pregnant or something. Because her going into space pregnant, I thought that was just irresponsible. You
Yeah,
know, I just
it was. It was.
that's like that. This is just ridiculous. I don't see why she's going. I don't see why she's going into space. That doesn't because it was so contradictory that you're fighting so hard for your child after the child is born, and but you're going into space with the unborn child and say, hey, I guess this is okay. And you're going up against this major threat. Why are you doing this? It did not make any sense whatsoever. This is but then I always thought maybe she's 6 months pregnant, that sort of thing. But then when she went into labor, I was like, she's how far along did she went into pregnant? I mean, she went into
I
pregnant.
thought out she was 3 or 4 months when she was pregnant. But look, I agree with you there. Let's get on to the
There's
review.
no way there's no way she was 3 or 4 months pregnant showing that much. There's no way.
So hey, so let's get into the review. Overall, what is your take? What was your did you enjoy? What would you give the rating for this movie? You don't have to be a
Well,
rating, but what's your overall take on this movie?
like I said, I think if Marvel is trying to right their ship, this is a very good step in the right direction. They're gonna need a few more of these. I think the general audience is gonna be I think the general audience, people who go to see this will be very pleased, with what Marvel's giving them. Um, we're gonna stay away from scales. The the major criticisms I have of the film are as a comic book guy. I just don't think the general audience is going to care because they're not going to say, "Oh, well, Galactus should have flown in Power Cosmic." They don't know about this stuff. But then you turn Galactus into a bum of the month. I'm not too sure about that. I'm not too sure about that either. But I do think with I think the majority of people who see this film will enjoy it. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to get as many people out as they would like. I think that they still might be in competition with themselves in terms of Disney Plus, but we'll see how that whole thing shakes out.
Oh, interesting. With this, where I think I diverged from you. I think the movie did pretty well, but I think I've told you this already. I told others. I think it's a disservice to these type of movies, putting two of them one after the other. They put Superman in on just 2 weeks ago, and now they're putting this here. Um, it, they're going to cannibalize each other, and I think that was made intentionally because Feige did this before with when he found out about Batman versus Superman. He said we're going to do Civil War, and that of course, Civil War was a huge hit, and Batman versus Superman did pretty well. But the fact of the matter is that I think they have the entire month of August they could have put this, and I think Fantastic Four being the only superhero movie would have done, I think, even better than what it's going to end up being. I know next week there's going to be a drop, but I can't imagine people like. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what people are going to say and do, but I think that it's like leaving money on the table. Superhero movies this year have been doing like around 500 million a year for this year, which is not as much as they used to. But as long as they're breaking even, because these movies are super expensive, they're probably going to have to reevaluate how much they spend on some of these movies, to make up the numbers going forward. Probably don't have to put every single hero in it like they used to. Why didn't you just go back to one or two heroes a movie and focus on something like that until they do like a big adventure like film? But I mean, overall, I liked it. I was very pleasantly surprised. Um, Clearly, um, Pascal is Disney's. What do you call it? He has the hot hands in Disney's that whenever there's a problem, hey, help us with Star Wars, Mandalorian, help us, Warner Brothers, hey, help us with Last of Us. Hey, help us with. He knows what to do, and he brings his audience to him. He has an audience that follows him, and that's a good thing. Um, I just hope that my thought initially on this is that this will be a one-off. Fantastic Four will make it to Avengers Doomsday, and they are gone, and they're going to bring back Krasinski and stuff like that. I like Krasinski, you know, but I don't know if Krasinski is going to come back, but Pablo Pascal has definitely put himself on the map, at least for becoming Mr. Fantastic. Now, this is what was it? Do you remember what Earth this was? 828, I think it was.
Eight 818
Eight,
something,
something like that. So we know it's not our main
eight
question.
oh eight.
And we know in the Thunderbolts movie, they show up at the very end, or their ship shows up in our current Marvel timeline. So either they're going to come and adopt a new Earth, or this version is not going to survive what's going to happen after Doomsday. So I would like to see this, but it's just like we know Doomsday is going to be a complete pairing of the Marvel potential Marvel universe full of heroes, and I think unfortunately these guys may be on the block when that happens. But if they prove popular, then it changes around. So if you want them to stay, I suggest you go out and check out the movie as much as you can, so that they say, "Hey, we'll hold on to these guys." So
Well, it looks like they want the Fantastic Four to hang around a bit. So that's from the style and the structure of the movie. That's the impression that I'm getting. But we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot to speculate on, and I'm trying to give these guys as much grace as possible with the film right now. I thought they did a good job with what they needed to do here. Again, they made a crowd pleasing film. So take a nice little lap around. The only thing that they do have to look at is whatever the drop off is going to be this coming weekend because they still do have competition with Superman. They do, and Marvel films tend to be a bit more front loaded, so they usually try to make all their money and they want to try to make as much money possible in the first outing. That's how they're set up. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I mean, even after everything was all said and done, Superman still debuted to a higher total than Fantastic Four did. So that's got to be something that they're looking at because they did better internationally, but the global box office, Superman still outpaced the film by about I think anywhere between 5 and 7 million. So I know they're probably going to have to look at that, you know, overall. But I'll be honest, even with those numbers, I still think the film was, well done. So
Yeah, overall.
we
I mean,
shouldn't have they shouldn't have an issue there. At the very least, they may not get the numbers that they're looking for, but at the very least, they should look at the quality of the film and say, yeah, this is the direction we should be going in.
yeah, just go make the movies a little cheaper. That's it. So hey, this is Spinner Rack. If you like what you hear, comment, subscribe, follow us. Spinner Rack
Hey, we're out.
out.